Greetings, mathophiles, and welcome to an introduction to some of the features of the list editor on the TI-84 family of calculators. You'll see on the screen a data set that involves the price of a first-class 1-ounce letter in the United States for various years from 2012 up through the present. This data set represents the years in which the rate was increased and the amount to which it was increased. And because we're going to be doing a little bit of something with that later, we're also including values of the consumer price index for those years. The way you enter data on your calculator is to press the Stat button and then take the very first choice in the very first menu, Edit. And it will take you to this area known as the List Editor, which contains by default 6 lists, L1 through L6. And so you'll see here that we have the last 2 digits of the year. In L1, we have the first class letter price in cents in L2, and we have the consumer price index value in L3. Here's a slick little feature that allows you to transform values within a column according to some sort of formula. Let's say instead of the last 2 years, I wanted the entire 4 digits of the year. I could click up to the label and I could go L1, which is second numeral 1, plus 2000. And now I have the entire 4 digits of the year. And you can do that with any sort of transformation that you may want to make. You can transform units from inches to centimeters by multiplying by the appropriate factor, whatever you need to do. So it's rather slick. We'll take a quick look at a graph of the first class postage rate against the year, just to kind of get a sense for how those look. So in case you're unfamiliar, that second y equals for stat plot. We want the first one to be on. We want it to graph L1 horizontally and L2 vertically. It's set for a scatter plot. And if I go zoom 9, which is the zoom, I don't know why it's behaving like that. If I go zoom 9, which is the zoom stat command, it will create a window that will automatically cover all of my values. Now, if I wanted, I could have that vertical axis start down at 0 or maybe a little bit below. So I could have a y-min of maybe -5, and that would allow me to see how this looks sort of against a baseline of 0. But let's go back to this look because it allows us to see the variability. It allows us to have a sense for how it's increasing. Notice that there's one spot where there was a decrease. If I trace over to that, that was in 2016, where it actually dialed back from 49 cents to 47 cents. Last time that happened, a nominal decrease in the price of a first class letter, was post-World War I, when the 3-cent rate that had been in effect for the war was dialed back to the previous rate of 2 cents, just so you're aware. All right, let's go back to the list editor. And let's try to adjust these figures for inflation, because that's going to be the really meaningful comparison over time. If you just look at the nominal price, as it's called, you're measuring both the change in the overall price rate and the change in the price of the particular item, in this case, the postage stamp. But we can manage to factor out inflation and sort of see left over the actual changes relative to the prices of other things. So I'm going to go back into the list editor, which is stat, and then edit. I said edit. And we're going to find a new column. So we have an empty column in L4. And we're going to take these prices in L2 and we're going to multiply them by a ratio of consumer price index values. It's beyond the scope of this video how the consumer price index works. It's a thing you can Google if you like. I got these values from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But anyway, what we're going to do is take the prices, which are found in L2, so second L2, times the consumer price index value for 2021, which is 271. That's the last annual value that's known. And then divide by the consumer price index value for each of these individual years. So that's the values in L3, second L3, and there they are. And these, of course, are values in cents. It maybe isn't very necessary to look at 1,000th of a cent. And so we could just leave it, or we could go up here and ask the calculator to round them. This is another instance of a transformation that you can make. So I can go math num, second command is round. Round what? Round the values in L4 to how many decimal places? To 0 decimal places. And now if we wish, we can go back and layer on another plot of the real prices, as they're called, or the constant value 2021 prices. So they were in L4, and here we go. And this isn't very helpful, so I'm going to change the indicator here. Let's make these little plus signs, and there's the graph. And as you can now see, the impression of huge increase that you get when you look at the raw unadjusted data is rather much more moderate when we take a look at the data when they've been adjusted for inflation. A few more things that might be good to know how to do. One is this, and we don't have much purpose for that with the data that we've been looking at, but just so you know how to do it, you can ask the calculator to add all the values in a list. And the way you do that is you go second stat, which is the list command in your little second color there. You go over to math, third menu, and down to the fifth choice, which is sum, and then just tell it what you want added up. So maybe I want to add up the values in L4. There's no purpose for that given what they are, but just so you know how this works. And there's the total. You can also ask for a cumulative sum. You can ask the calculator to give you the sum in a new column of all the values up to a given value in some other column. And the way that works is, we got to go back in here. Let's say we wanted to get a cumulative sum of the values in L5. Again, we don't have much purpose for that, but there are other situations where you would. So we'll click up. We go to second list. This time we'll go over to ops, down to command number 6, cumulative sum. From where? From L4. And there they are. So you see the 53, and then the second entry is the 53 plus 54, and the third entry is the sum of the first 3, and so on and so on. Sometimes you may need to enter a column of data that's in an arithmetic sequence, and potentially it could be a pretty long one. For example, you may want to do something with data from the United States Census, and so you'd want to enter every 10 years from 1790 to 2020. And that would be somewhat soul-destroying. And so let's look at a better thing that is available in situations like that. So I'm here in L5. I'm just going to clear out the stuff that's there. Then I'm going to click back up there, and I'm going to do the following. I'm going to go second stat for list, over to the ops menu where we just were, and down to the sequence command. And when I do that, I get a dialog box. And I've sort of given myself away because I was playing with this ahead of time. But you enter some expression, and our expression is going to be 1790 plus 10x, because we want to start in 1790 and go up every 10 years. Until 2020. I have to declare that the variable is x. I have to say where I'm starting. So I'm starting at 0, because if I started at 1, my first entry in my list would be 1800. And this most recent census is the 23rd census, and I want to click the x's up by 1. So I hit paste, and it will put this great big long list down in this sort of dialog area. And then if I hit enter, there are all the values, and I have saved myself a world of annoyance and probably several keystroke errors. So that has been a quick introduction to some of the things you can do in the list editor. And for some purposes, it's it's a fairly powerful little thing. So happy mathing.